Good evening. I'd like to welcome what looks like a packed audience, which is very nice to see tonight. And I'd like to welcome anyone who's watching online on our YouTube channel. My name's Councillor Corinna Smart. I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. So we'll start. We have apologies for absence. Wendy?
I've got Councillors Ashmere and Vikram Garabal.
Okay. Okay, so we're just moving into the declarations of interest under the Town Planning Code of Practice and any other communications from members. I would imagine we've all heard quite extensive correspondence over Charlton House from both sides. Tonight, the objectors mainly from, if I'm correct, Market Terrace, but they are also they may be representing other areas. And obviously we've seen a lot of the development of that over the last 2 years. And some people will have been into the local shop, and probably possibly met with the team that have been working on that development. Are there any other people who'd like to add to the Charlton House area, and then we'll move on to the others? Sorry, just Charlton House at the moment. Councillor Mel Collins.
Thank you. Just in connection with going into the shop, I went in and had an extensive talk with people with the drawings on the wall, and I think it's only right and proper that I should declare that as an additional interest.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Okay, so we'll then move on to item on. There's been some correspondence with the officers about Burlington Lane, and then on agenda item 5, I've had conversations with Councillor Unsa Chowdhury. Right, over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I always have conversations with Councillor Chowdhury. She's a very good ward councillor. I've had conversations with the developer as well. He called me out of the blue. I think an officer gave him my number, said to talk to me about it, but I told him I'd be impartial until the report was out. I don't know who told him. And also, I've had a call from Councillor Sue Sampson on this matter as well, bizarrely. But that's my declaration of interest.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harleen Atwell.
Yep.
Councillor Unsa Chowdhury, did you say? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that goes for most people.
Yep. And Councillor Sampson.
Okay. Thank you. Some of you didn't. Okay. Fine. Okay. That's fine. Okay. That's covered everybody. Thank you. Okay. Just to let you know, there are no minutes tonight because the turnaround was far too quick to get those done. So those minutes for the previous meeting and tonight's meeting will come to the July Planning Committee meeting. Okay. So we'll now move on to planning applications for decision tonight, and we will start with Charlton House, Albany House and Osier Court, Albany Road, Brentford, and that's your pages 6 to 118 in your main paper. And then there are a few addendums, which we have numbered pages today: 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think 6. Perhaps it goes on. Yes, that's it. And a tiny bit on 6. Okay, Kiri.
Thanks, Councillor Smart. So this is a planning application relating to Charlton House, Albany House and Osier Court. The application is for the demolition of the existing buildings and redevelopment with a residential-led mixed-use proposal for 209 affordable homes and flexible non-residential uses at ground floor.
Thank you very much. Just a brief introduction. So we're over now to the objector, Peter James. Thank you. If you'd like to come to the table, you'll have 5 minutes And we'll start timing you from when you first start, and you'll be warned 30 seconds before the end. And once you've done your objections, then it'll be open to councillors on the committee to ask you any questions that they might have. Okay, so over to you.
Cool, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll try and keep this in less than 5 minutes. This might look prepared, but it's also a stream of consciousness from earlier, so apologies for that. Yeah, here to talk to you about Charlton House and Albany Road on behalf of myself, my family, and the other residents of Market Terrace. I'd like to start by saying we're not opposed to the redevelopment of the site. We completely recognise the need for social housing and housing in general, and that the council has a responsibility to provide that. And we also welcome the regeneration of it. It's not particularly the greatest looking development at present. What we are looking for is an amendment to the proposed designs in the form of a reduction of the height of the building frontage on Albany Road from 5 floors stepping up to 6 to 4 floors stepping up to 5 and then again up to 6, such that it doesn't have such a dramatic impact on the environment. So the impact of the sunlight and daylight reduction on Market Terrace, Albany Road, which runs along the north edge of the proposed development, is dramatic. I'm not sure if you all have the daylight and sunlight report in front of you, but if you'll forgive me quoting a little bit of it, where it says in Appendix 2.1, the daylight and sunlight report compiled by Waldron show that many of the residents of Market Terrace stand to lose in the region of 60 to 70% of their winter sunlight. Given the period nature of the properties, the drying effect of the sunlight on these buildings is crucial. Many of them already suffer badly at the rear of the properties due to damp and condensation where there is no sunlight in order to provide this drying effect. And it also, robbing these properties is tantamount to material damage. Now, one thing that has changed since this proposal was submitted and now is that the conservation area itself has been extended to include Market Terrace and Mafeking Avenue. So, to my mind, this is material damage to the conservation area, which as part of the, I think it was, you'll forgive me, whether it was the sunlight and daylight report or whether it was the agenda notes for this evening, stated that there was no direct impact from the development on the conservation area. In the agenda for today, on point 8.276, it's acknowledged that the numerical guidelines for the BRE guidelines are not mandatory and they can be applied flexibly where justified. The guidance allows for an alternative measurement to be made when an undeveloped site is to be redeveloped, and that given that it's often unavoidable that reductions occur which go above the 20% threshold that the BRE states will be noticeable. This is relevant given the large expanse of the car park in the existing site. It was therefore agreed that the alternative VSE target of 20% could be used as an appropriate alternative target for the proposed development, reflecting the more urban characteristics of the site. So I would say to that the site is currently not undeveloped. There's a 9-story building on one side, I think it's 5 or 6 on the other side, and then there's a single-story garages running along Albany Road. So I think that characterization of it being an undeveloped site is wrong. Yeah, furthermore, in the sunlight and daylight report, under section 4, they say, further to the discussions with local planning officers, an alternative target value of 20% retained VSC in absolute terms have been set. In our view, this represents more contextually appropriate level of daylight when taking in consideration the desired level of development for the area and better reflects the realistic levels of daylight currently enjoyed by residents already living in the area. However, I'd say that this view is entirely inappropriate to apply to 1 to 8 Market Terrace. Furthermore, the brief states it's inappropriate to apply it because we're not in central London. This is a small residential zone in a conservation area. The BRE notes suggest that these test methods should be not praised in isolation, but rather should be considered together, and it's not appropriate to dismiss the transgression of one test because
30 seconds left.
Oh dear. Okay. Yeah, it's massively overshadowing. It's genuinely going to, like, it's acknowledging the report that that is a very important street. It connects one half of Brentford to the other, and it's really depressing when you have huge buildings. If anyone goes down Brentford High Street at the moment, you can see testament to exactly what it's starting to feel like. People were sold this regeneration idea of the high street, and they're looking
That's
at
5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll now move over to questions for the objector. Okay, I'm looking to see if there are any questions. Councillor Tony Lukey.
Hello, good evening. I've received correspondence from your group of neighbours. Tell me, what discussions did you have with the applicant prior to the planning application being submitted?
Sorry, can you put your mic on, please?
Sorry, I thought this was, I'd have the camera on, it caused problems. So we went to the shop frontage, the regen workshops with the developers, and we were taken through some of the details. We were provided some of the numbers on request with regard to daylight losses, a number which actually were proved to be false when we got the proper report. But we did our due diligence in looking into what the effects would be.
Sorry, I've got a few on this theme, Chair. When you say they were false, in what way were they false? And what was the outcome of your due diligence?
So with regard to my property, I asked at the time what would be the impact on mine, and I was given a figure of a loss of 50% of sunlight in winter. Checking the report itself, it turned out that not only had they mischaracterized my front door, which doesn't have any kind of window, as being a window, that was the 50% was for that door. The actual windows in my property stood to lose closer to 63% of their winter sunlight.
And was that just your property, or how many other properties? What number are you at?
I'm at number 6 on the ground floor.
Okay, so number 1 is nearest the Ealing Road, and it goes up to about number 10 or 12 past the chip shop.
Yes, correct.
And
we did find other miscategorizations, and people's windows just being entirely omitted from the report, or gardens considered commercial area.
And how many stories do you think would this reduction that you're seeking in height? What would the impact be if it was reduced? How would that satisfy? How could that satisfy neighbours across the road if it was reduced by a floor nearest your nearest Albany Road?
So we did our own sort of crew calculations using some of those publicly available sunlight analysis tools, and we found that we stood to gain, I think it was an average of about 15%. The reduction was mitigated by about 15% for the houses in the centre of the property, and I think more 5% towards the edges of Market Terrace. And it was also one of those things where you can stand out on the street and look out, and based on the current 9-story block there, you can extrapolate across where 5-6 stories is likely to be, and you can see where your skyline is going to be.
Thanks. And did you raise this with the applicant? At what point did you raise this with the applicant? What was the outcome, and did you discuss it with them? And what was the outcome of those discussions? And what were your expectations?
So all of this came to be found out after we'd had our meetings with the regeneration team. We didn't go and proactively engage them in another conversation. It was, I believe, it's quite a short window between that and us actually receiving the consultation period notification.
So was there what change? So there was no change. You had no further discussion. First you learnt about it when you saw the application. Did you chase after that?
Sorry, first I learnt about.
Well, the first you learnt that it wasn't. The first that you learnt that it wasn't going to be changed. That your request to change, because this wasn't the first. Yeah, tonight. I mean, I've had letters in the last few weeks, couple of weeks about this, but we heard about it a little while back as well, didn't we? I think people raised this. Your neighbours raised it. So who did you raise it with, and when did you? What was the outcome of that?
So I believe that the first sort of objection we did after that was when the consultation began, and we began submitting our objections to it. I wasn't aware that there was, a pre-phase to that, but
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Okay, just looking round. Any other questions for the objector? Councillor John Todd.
Okay. Good evening. You've clearly done a lot of work, and I've got the impression you'd screwed up your timing and what you wanted to say. So can I be fair? Because others will be speaking for hours. Any key points you've missed out that you wanted to raise, please? In brief.
Yeah, just the one small one as a sort of signing off point, which is at the moment I know the council's under a lot of heat or pressure because of backlash from the Osterley Park home base Tesco developments at the moment, and
Sorry, I'm sorry. You can't say that. That's not relevant. You need to let us hear what it is that you object to on this specific planning application. You can't refer to anything else.
Okay.
Sorry.
So my point being more about rather than spending time and money for public money defending decisions that are.
I'm sorry, you're still on the same issue. You
No,
can't.
I'm
you
sorry.
can't-
I'm just talking about this now. So, given that I'm here contesting this at the moment, and that there will be, you guys have an onus to try and make your judgment. We've got an onus to try and protect our local area as best we can. Wouldn't it be nicer if the time and energy and money that goes into debatable planning applications such as
Again,
this one.
sorry, you are still crossing over those lines. I'm terribly sorry. You really cannot say these things.
Okay.
It's not relevant to this particular planning application. I'm very sorry.
Can I perhaps lead you now? Would you mind?
I was going to say, Councillor John Todd, perhaps you would ask the questions rather than leave it open.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I was trying to help, that's all.
Yeah, no,
Don't worry.
apologies.
Don't worry, it's a very difficult situation, I understand that, yeah. Just to clarify simple points, how many people are you representing tonight?
Haven't done a head count, but I would say 7 of us have been quite tightly knit. Other those in the commercial units haven't been so in on the discussions.
And how many units are there?
I think it's 1 to 8.
13?
Sorry, 1 to 8. Oh, how many commercial units?
No, you represent 7 flats. I don't know how many other people live there who are not represented by you.
Yes, so I believe that it's the people on number 7 who are renters who I haven't been in any direct
Okay, so it's a
contact
small
with.
number you're not representing.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to labour the point. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm slightly confused about your suggestion of false documentation of data. Have you got a copy of the report?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. Well,
I'm quite happy to accept that it was more than anything an oversight. It was just the fact that we had to go there, request the information, and they verbally gave it to us rather than a sheet being presented.
Okay, but that's quite proper, and you've been very fair there. But I've got to push you for the evidence that that was misleading or wrong. What intention? How can you prove the intention to mislead?
As I said, I accept maybe it was a mistake, but
Okay.
the data being delivered in that way and being delivered incorrectly.
Okay.
was a problem.
I suppose the acid test is, what did you do? I mean, when you established the figures were wrong, yeah, are you satisfied the method you used was appropriate? It's quite a technical system to do. What you're challenging.
Yeah. So we did. So I already had my suspicions that wasn't right. We have spoken to another surveyor, and we have gotten them to do an appraisal of the daylight and sunlight report, and they found it wanting according to the BRE guidelines that it was meant to be following.
The bottom line is you want this to be refused.
I would like it to be pushed back with amendments. As I said,
We mentioned the reduced number of floors.
Yeah, just on the frontage.
Okay.
I think it's not unreasonable to put the architects that being, design firm, to put them to task to put something together that works for everyone.
Okay. Paragraph 8279 talks about neighbours' windows, and it says 73% of the windows tested met the BRE guidelines. Am I taking that out of context, or would you like to respond to that?
Apologies, without having that bit in front of me, but I could tell you, maybe I looked. Was that just for Market Terrace, or was that for Albany Road at large?
Sorry, Chair. It's on page 72 of the report. It's a heading dealing with daylight, dealing with BRE, vertical sky component tests and things. But what they're saying, there may be a variation, but the net effect is that 73% of the windows tested met the BRE guidelines, which it could be argued challenges your assumptions.
Yeah, sorry, is that Market Terrace or Albany Road?
Doesn't say, I don't think.
Sorry, what was the section?
Sorry for clarity, John.
Please do, yes.
It's more than Market Terrace. It's also the part of Albany Road which is sort of equally affected to Market Terrace.
Okay.
And one or two other bits, like a couple of houses in Brook Road South, etc.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Sorry, what was the section?
It's page 73, 72, 73. You mentioned it in your speech. So if you've got page 72 open, the paragraph starts at 8274, and the part I'm referring to specifically, the 73% data, is at paragraph 8279 on the other page.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not challenging you. I'm not giving you the opportunity to respond.
Yeah, I'm just hard to see where relevant neighbouring windows is defined.
Would it help if you go down further to there's a table at 8281 on page bottom of 73, and over the page it goes to the various percentages of on the site, addressing my colleague's recommendation. There we are.
Yeah, I mean, if you cast your eyes down this table from top to bottom, so, Brook Road South, 50% of the windows on page 73, the first table is 50% of the windows meet BRE. 3 Brook Road South, all windows meet. Then 1 Market Terrace, 87%. And then, by the time you've got to 2 Market Terrace, 33%, 3 Market Terrace, 0%, 4 Market Terrace, 43%.
Well, can I interrupt you with respect? Would you look at page 77? That's it deals with some of the properties you're talking about, Market Terrace. And if you look at the right-hand side, that percentage passes 100% halfway down, virtually 90% of the page.
So, that this doesn't actually split out the properties according to ground floors. So given, and I think that it's not deemed. I'm not saying that these are illegal figures. I'm saying that they're disproportionately impacted.
It's very helpful. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? No, doesn't appear to be. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay. So I now want the applicant to step forward. I'm understanding I've got Mr. Kumar. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. That's my, and I knew that as well, didn't I? I'm terribly sorry. And Dave Cox, if you come up to the table as well. And I gather you're going to split your time 4 minutes and 1 minute for Dave. Okay. Yeah, yes. I'm sure there will be an opportunity for the councillors to ask you further questions as has just been happening. Okay, so what will happen is as you start, it will be 4 minutes timed. You'll be told 30 seconds before the end for you, and then when you should finish. Okay, and same for you, Dave. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application. In February last year, the residents of Charlton House and Albany House voted overwhelmingly in favour of comprehensive regeneration of the estate, which has been identified as one of Hounslow's poorest performing estates. A year on, and I'm delighted to present the proposals which will deliver 209 modern, fit-for-purpose, sustainable homes, the majority of which will be council homes for council tenants at council rents. Built to Passive House standards, the new homes will significantly reduce the heating requirement and therefore the cost of living for residents. It will make an emphatic contribution to the borough's ambition to tackling climate emergency and will achieve a 62% carbon reduction in operational carbon. Embodied carbon has also been minimised through an efficient structure and use of recycled materials. This estate, dominated by car parks and wholly lacking in amenity space, will have a range of landscaped community courtyards and rooftop terraces, providing opportunities for residents to socialise and children to play. The biodiversity value of this site will be significantly improved through the introduction of flower-rich planting, rain gardens and green roofs. Alongside this, 21 of the 31 trees will be carefully retained and 45 new trees will be planted. The proposal will not only deliver a high quality and sustainable environment for residents, but also for the wider community. Where currently Charlton House obstructs pedestrian movement, the proposal will create 2 new pedestrianised streets directly connecting the community, the wider community, to the High Street and the Riverside. Where the current street frontage is characterised by shuttered garages and blank walls, the proposal will present a traditional street frontage characterised by comings and goings of domestic life, front doors, windows and gardens. Active street frontages, together with good lighting and unobstructed sightlines, will be safe and will feel safe. It will deliver a modern, fit-for-purpose neighbourhood retail centre, which will serve the everyday needs of the local community. The centre will have a much more improved presence along the High Street and will support active public life and public space. The proposal will continue the tradition of high-quality public housing, which is inspired, thoughtful and considered, and based on a deep understanding of everyday lives of individuals and families. It is inefficient in its use of resources, space, and public money. It presents a fine balance of richness and restraint. Richness of detail, which will bring joy and delight, and restraint in the skillful use of materials, which speaks of robustness, longevity, and is timeless. To conclude, the comprehensive regeneration of Charlton House and Albany House is a flagship scheme of the Council's estate regeneration programme, a fitting addition to the evolving character of Brentford, and an exemplar council housing scheme which will transform the lives of residents and deliver significant public benefits to the wider community. Thank you. And I'll hand you over to Dave.
Good evening. My first one is, do the council need to knock down this housing stock? Of course they do. The repair and maintenance of these buildings must be horrendous. The majority are for moving into accommodation fit for the 21st century. And when I talk about the majority of the residents of these blocks. Obviously, there are some residents who are against it for personal reasons. Most tenants have raised issue with policy of building without dedicated resident parking, which is the biggest single factor that has been raised. Residents have seen changes in design of this building over a period of time, and they have been involved in some of those changes to actually make them better for themselves as well as local residents. Residents are now on tenterhooks looking to move forward into a new accommodation. While some will undoubtedly return to these new homes, others will be happy with the housing that they've
30
been
seconds
put
left.
in. I've got 2 lines, but most want to see Brentford moving and coming into the 21st century, of course, with the infrastructure to match. Charlton House and the other blocks within this regeneration programme must be replaced. The buildings are old and very, very tired. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Mel Collins, I'll take you first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so quick question to Kumar, and thank you for your very concise presentation there. The one bit that you've actually left out, which is probably one of the most important for not only the residents of existing Charlton House, but to a wider community. You didn't give us any real plan as to what retail will come back and what negotiations you've had with the present retailers to encourage them to come back if you've been able to resettle them temporarily.
Thank you, Councillor Collins, for your question. So first of all, I would like to say that we absolutely recognise that the Albany Parade shops make a significant contribution in meeting the daily needs of the local community. And we have been having in-depth discussions with each and every one of the retailers in Albany Parade. Obviously, each and every one of them are different. Their needs, their requirements, their future aspirations are different. And we have been speaking to them about their options to relocate elsewhere, either in Brentford or more widely. Equally, we have been talking to them about their options of coming back to the development. Importantly, the designs of the neighbourhood retail centre that we are putting forward to you today make allowances for all of those retailers who are currently there to be able to come back. So there is the infrastructure available for them to come back, but equally they are flexibly designed. So should they change their minds, should they not want to come back, or should they want to continue trading from their newly relocated position, they can carry on doing so, and some other form of retail can come back into the development. On the point about what are we thinking of putting back, so we have yet to do further work, but what is absolutely clear, the guiding principle is going to be that it is a neighbourhood retail centre. It has been designed for the purposes of serving everyday community needs, and it will continue to serve the everyday community needs of the residents and the local community. Thank you.
You have a supplementary? Okay, sorry, I misheard you. Sorry, Mel. Okay, thank you. Okay, right. Okay, Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that presentation. When I first heard about the objections from Market Terrace, the request that was made by Vitas, who was the sort of ringleader, sorry, it sounds a terrible word, but the spokesman, let's put it that way, was that in the original plans it was only 4 stories, which would have been acceptable, and it was changed to be 5, 6 stories. And I asked the question at the time, was it possible to revert to 4 stories, and I didn't really get an answer. I don't think anybody really engaged with that question. So could you tell me what why you did make that change and what the benefits were of that change? Because clearly there is some disbenefit to Market Terrace residents.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert, for your question. So just to be absolutely clear, we never tabled a proposal with a 4-storey element, just to be absolutely clear. So as you're well aware, there have been 2 phases to the development of this proposal. The first phase was when we went to the residents asking them the question, would you like us to regenerate this scheme? And we weren't developing proposals, we were simply talking about the principles of regeneration. So we put out some imagery which may have led some residents to believe that is indeed the case, but it was never a proposal. We started working on the designs of the proposals from July of last year, and ever since we did present, it was in fact, some of our earlier proposals were tall, the massing was much closer to the residents of Market Terrace and Albany Road. After having gone through a consultation exercise with the wider community, with the planning officers, and at the outcome of the daylight and sunlight reports we received, we have actually amended the scheme to pull the building line back, to modulate the building height and the massing to make it more, to make it acceptable. So yeah, just to say that it was never really 4 stories. And the initial proposals have been modified in response to the concerns raised. Thank you.
Sorry, you talked a bit about benefits to the wider community. Can you sort of explain? I mean, if you were living in Market Terrace, is there a positive spin that you'd put on this?
So in terms of the key benefits to the wider community, first and foremost, as I said in my presentation, that the Charlton House, the way it's currently laid out, is a big impediment to any kind of movement down Brook Road South, which is a key north-south link linking the neighbourhood and the community north to the High Street. So we are creating 2, not 1, but 2 new pedestrianised streets, which will extend Brook Road South all the way across the development onto the riverside and the High Street, and equally Mafeking Avenue will also be extended. So that's kind of one of the kind of greatest urban gestures, if you like. The thing about the Albany Road itself, there has been a concentrated effort to improve the quality of public realm on Albany Road. So the Albany Road footpath as it stands is, we have widened it to up to 4.5 meters in places. It's going to be quite heavily landscaped. They're going to be, it's quite a key route for children who live in that area to go to their primary school, but equally it's quite a key route for people who live there to go to St. Paul's Recreation Ground. So it's a really important route. So by introducing quite a landscaped scheme, by introducing a very wide footpath, by introducing better lighting, play on the way, but most importantly, we are replacing the backs of garages and shuttered garages and blank walls, which really reinforce the feeling of, being unsafe, etc., by front doors of homes along the street in a traditional way. And that is going to quite dramatically change the character of Albany Road and the way it feels, and will make a much better connection to the local school, to the local playground, etc. And that is, as you say, if I were living in Market Terrace, I would be quite pleased to have a much better quality of environment to be living on.
A final question. Mel Collins asked you about the existing retail. I mean, there's not going to be any retail there for, 3 years. They're not going to come back. Their businesses will be dead if they can't just go and sort of sleep, hibernate for 3 years. So if any retail comes back, it will be, most likely it will be different retailers. So the question really is, what provision has been made for those retailers to continue somewhere in Brentford? Because I'm not really interested in them being in Isleworth or Ealing. Sure. And what, how do we know that? How can you convince me that retail will come back to the redeveloped complex given that the rents will probably be 5 times as high as they are today.
Sure. So on the point about retail coming back, it's one of the options. It's we will be led by what the businesses themselves want to do. It's their sort of, if they would like to come back, then we will facilitate that. If they believe it's much better for their business to relocate once and continue trading from their new location, then we will support that. The important point is that they will be able to make that choice, and we will support them in whatever choice they make, through not just sort of, providing options for relocation, but also providing business support and advice. I mean, we recognize these are all small independent retailers who need that sort of business support and advice. So we will be providing that alongside options to relocate. In terms of your question around what are the other opportunities in Brentford for them to relocate, as you may be well aware, we are building a building called, quite popularly known as Block D, further down the road, which has a comprehensive set of retail offer. So if the existing retailers are interested, we can explore that option as well. In terms of the rates and the rental levels going up, as I was explaining earlier on, it is going to be an individualized package for each of those retailers. Some of them have actually said they just want to relocate and not come back because they don't want the disruption. Some others have said, no, actually, we really want to trade from here because this is our local catchment. So for them, it is important to come back. And for others, it's less important to come back. So we will make that offer that is very much tailored, and consideration for what they can actually afford to pay for rent will form part of that offer. So yeah, we will facilitate what they need for their business and as individuals. Thank you.
Councillor John Todd.
Hi. I loved your presentation and your choice of words. I must ask you to explain. You mentioned the estate will bring joy and delight. Do you want to add any more to that?
Sure. Yes, I do believe that the new neighbourhood will bring joy and delight with what we are designing. And I'd just like to sort of quote something that we did, a specific series of engagement sessions with the children and young people on this estate. And what was really telling was that they didn't, the state has a very strong sense of community, and most residents know each other. But what was interesting, the children themselves didn't know each other. And the reason for that was that there is actually nowhere on this estate for them to come together and play. And I think this development will provide a whole series of communal courtyards, roof terrace gardens, with a series of opportunities for children and families to come together and be a community. And just the other point to make is that one of the things they said about our initial proposals was that, yes, you've designed for 0 to 5 age group, you've designed for 5 to 11 age group, but that's not how we live our lives. We live our lives as a family. The older siblings bring the younger children to come and play. Family come as a group, so it has to be multi-generational. It has to work for every section of society. So we do believe that our provision of the community courtyards and the landscaped areas, more than anything else, will bring that joy and delight.
What can I say? Okay. Page 78 of the report. Do you want to look at paragraph 8287, please? Paragraph 287, yeah. I was disappointed in both your presentations that you didn't seek to address some of the points made by the objector. They find themselves in a difficult position because they start before you've got the knowledge. So I want to just probe that gently. If you read paragraph 287, I know it's not your report, but it's a comment on your development. And I'm halfway down the paragraph. It says, talking about sunlight, in some other instances, the impacts are greater and the loss of daylight to some windows would be noticeable to residents. But then we have this breathtaking statement. However, the overall daylight levels would be satisfactory for an urban environment. So there's a criteria for light in urban against city or whatever different.
That is correct, Councillor Todd. There is a greater acceptance for the levels of daylight in an urban environment as compared to, say, a rural environment where it is much more open and there is greater levels of daylight. And what we are achieving in this development, we are achieving excellent levels of sunlight. We are achieving levels of daylight, which is commensurate with what we've agreed with the planning authority. And we're also achieving good levels of daylight in the gardens. Yeah.
Okay, but that's quite specific content there that people would notice it. There is a change. There is a diminution. And with respect, you almost are ignoring it or not putting on the emphasis I think it deserves. Would you like to extend your response?
Sure. We completely accept that Market Terrace in particular, which is sitting opposite single-story garages, which is then also overlooking a very open car park, any kind of development that will be put forward on that stretch of land will have an impact on the residents in the surrounding area. Our sort of proposition is that the impact will be acceptable and the quality of daylight and sunlight will still be very good.
Can I move on, Chair, please? As I said, I love your vocabulary, and you described it as an exemplar scheme. Well, previous schemes that have come from the same stable have more than 62% energy efficiency. Some are up to 90%. So why can't you meet that level?
The scheme that's presented before you is going to be Passive House certified, which is quite a high level of insulation, which will reduce the...
Report says you're seeking to get that, not that it's going to be.
It is going to be, Councillor Todd. We are committing to achieving Passive House level certification.
You haven't got it yet?
No, we haven't got it yet.
Okay.
No, that's it. So no, what I'm saying is it is an exemplar scheme in terms of its sustainability credentials, because it will be achieving very high levels of insulation, which will dramatically reduce the energy demands for the residents. It is achieving 62%, which is a much greater figure than the 35% reduction that is required by policy. And we're also achieving, and I didn't mention this in my statement, BREEAM Excellent for the non-residential components of the scheme. There's been a lot of consideration given from initial design stages to the embodied carbon. So it's not an afterthought in the way the structure has been designed, in the way the materials have been considered. That kind of intrinsic consideration of design elements to ensure that when it is built, it can just seamlessly move into providing a building which is much reduced in its carbon emissions.
Okay, thank you. My last question is this. The heating scheme you're putting in, there are lots of options in the report, and one includes gas. So I'm slightly confused given our policy on gas and heating, where you've allowed that apparent option to pick what you want post planning permission being granted. Would you like to clarify what scheme you've got?
Sure. So we are proposing either an air source heat pump or a ground source heat pump for the provision of heating. The reason why we've left that as an open option is because we haven't done borehole digging, etc., yet to be able to identify which is the most suitable source of heat. But in either instances, they are non-gas based sources of heat.
Okay, so without that, supplement if I could, Chair, yeah. Without that data, the borehole, which I find surprising, how can you be so assured that you'll get 60%, 62% energy efficiency?
So we've done all the calculations on the worst case scenario. So we made sure that in the worst case scenario, we are still achieving that 62%. So it will never be worse than what we are suggesting.
So when are the boreholes being done?
as soon as we are receive planning permission and start progressing with the tender documentation.
And why did the report mention gas if it's not going to be used?
Sorry, Chair. I'm sorry, Councillor Todd. I'm not sure. Would you mind, Councillor Todd, if I just hand over to our consultant who can answer that question? Is that okay? Sorry, David, would you mind?
No, hi. It is an all electric scheme that is being proposed. So there is no gas apart from some very small gas supplies to where there is a restaurant for cooking. So there's no gas as part of the energy strategy. So it's all electric energy strategy with heat pumps.
I'm very grateful. That's very clear. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Tony Lukey. Sorry, Councillor Lukey, have you got questions for Dave as well, or is it just for?
It'd be lovely if Dave took his seat again. Yeah.
Yeah, come back, Dave, to the,
Come back,
to the table.
Dave. Nothing's forgiven.
Okay, it's all right. I'm just checking. Okay, over to you, Councillor Tony Lukey.
All right, thank you, Chair. This is for Dave actually. You heard the fellow who lived, your neighbour across the road at Market Terrace. What would you, as a representative, I believe, of residents there at the premises, at the flats there, what would you say if he was concerned that they would be adversely affected by light, by the through the design of the building as it is now? And what would you say if this maybe went back in order to address the levels that were first raised and first anticipated by residents during the consultation? Didn't turn out that way. What would you say if if they did if their request to move the heights a bit further towards a high street rather than facing Market Terrace?
Sorry, I forget. I've got a loud voice. The answer there is, of course, you can be sympathetic to the gentleman concerned and all his neighbours. But if you didn't have it there and you pushed it towards the Ealing, the High Street end, you'd have people across the road saying exactly the same. Where do you stop? Where do you start? I don't know anything technically about how much light goes through their front windows. But I can say I've lived in Charlton House for 29 years. And we've had trees outside our front doors that we've complained about constantly about light coming through. And the council, in their wisdom, haven't done anything really. So you've got guys living on the first floor who can't, they have to have their lights on all the time. There's always someone going to complain, and he's every right to complain, the same as the people that live over there. Luckily, I don't have that privilege of saying yes or no. I can just come along and say that the majority of people that live in Charlton House and Albany House and Osier Court are quite happy with what's being proposed. And the majority, and I can only talk for the majority, are happy with what they're seeing now. And we've been involved right from the start in making changes to the way that that's presented and what's being offered.
It's all right. One more for Ms. Kamal there. You mentioned the traders. I forgot to declare the interest there of being a patron of Albany Spice, and with the previous councillor Savin appeared in their first Facebook picture when they opened. Now, how can we? Would you accept conditions as the applicant, would you accept conditions that will guarantee those who wish to return to that location, traders who wish to return to that location, will be allowed to do that, but through condition rather than and also a condition that they would be allowed to go to corner of Catherine Wheel Road and the High Street, the council development on the old Akash Electronics and NatWest Bank post office. They'll be able to go there. They get the first refusal there, and then they get the first refusal back if that's what they want. You'll be able to agree to that in via condition.
Thank you, Councillor Lukey. Yes, I mean, we are definitely, those are the options that the traders will be given. And if there is a form of condition that you would like to put, then that's absolutely fine with us.
A guaranteed
Yes,
option.
they will be given those options, yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, hold on a second. I think it's not. I think the suggestion is it's going to be a Section 106 agreement as opposed to a condition.
Conditions.
Are you
Section
happy?
106,
You're happy
written
with
in
that?
blood,
Yeah?
anything, councillor. Yeah.
That's it. So it would be a Section 106. They're just checking the legality stuff here. Okay, thank you. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Sorry to be difficult because I'm coming back for a second bite.
I thought you were going to
Thank you.
declare an interest in Albany Spice, but there you go.
We all do that, yeah. I'm just concerned about, it's not normally my thing, but I'm concerned about this being car free. Not so much that, I mean, there will be issues with it being car free because there's a lot of cars parked there today. And there's nowhere else in Brentford to park. And we have a lot of stress on local CPZs after hours, etc., etc. So that's a concern. But my big concern there is the Albany Parade car park is the parking destination of choice for big vans, which are not allowed to park in CPZs. I say big vans, I'm talking about transit van type vans. And again, there's nowhere else for them to park in Brentford. In addition to that, the shops live partly on having parking right next to them. There won't be any parking right next to them. The nearest parking, I guess, will be in the Ballymore car park, which is quite a stretch away from if you're picking up a cauliflower. So I guess it's not really a question, but have you considered that and the impact of that on retail and on the local environment?
So in terms of the car parking for the existing residents, we have obviously stress tested the local CPZ, and there is capacity for us to be able to allow all existing residents who currently own a car, up to one car per household, for them to be able to come back and park in the CPZ, and it'd still be okay for it to be able to accommodate that. So that has been tested quite rigorously by the local planning authority and by ourselves. In terms of parking on site, we are providing up to 20 spaces, which will be reserved for the disabled users. So there is going to be some parking on the 2 new streets that we are creating, but also on Albany Road. And in terms of the parking for the retail elements, again, yes, you're absolutely right. They won't have the 2 car parking spaces that we now have, the public car parks, to be able to park, but there is metered parking in the wider area. And yes, there is a hope that people will be using a lot of, I mean, it's a local neighborhood center, so the people using it are living locally, and the expectation is, yes, indeed, that they will be in primarily walking or, taking the bus to it.
You didn't mention the vans, but I guess the vans is a policy matter that you can't deal with here.
I think that might be a question you want to put to the officers later. Okay, that looks like all the questions for you. Thank you both very much indeed, and for the consultant.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, over to you, Kiri.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and be relatively brief, as we've heard quite a few of the issues anyway. But just to recap, this is an application for the development of Charlton and Albany House Estate and Osier Court. The proposal is for 209 affordable homes, which is an uplift of 118 homes from the existing. It's a 100% affordable scheme with 97% social council rent and 3% intermediate, and it's submitted by the council's estate regeneration team. You can see the location of the site on here, although I appreciate you're all familiar. It lies to the north of High Street, south of Albany Road, east of Wilkes Road and west of Ealing Road. The existing estate comprises 3 main buildings ranging between 3 and 8 stories, and there are also single-storey garages and the open-air car park. The properties on Albany Road and Market Terrace, which we've been hearing about this evening, lie directly to the north of the site on the opposite side of the road. The application proposes the demolition of all of the existing buildings on site and the erection of 5 new buildings. You're seeing pictures here of the existing buildings on site. So demolition of all existing buildings, erection of 5 new buildings ranging between 1 and 8 stories, with communal amenity space provided in courtyards and podiums within the site. You'll see that on this site layout. So there's 5 blocks there. 2 new north-south routes will be proposed through the site, and a new east-west pedestrian link as well, which you can see on the plan as well. This will help permeability through the site. The scheme will be car-free, other than blue badge bays, although, as we've heard, existing residents will be eligible to apply for 1 permit in the CPZ. There'll be 7 blue badge bays provided from the outset, with 14 to be provided as needed. The proposal would re-provide up to 1,190 square metres of non-residential floor space, so that's to replace the existing commercial units that are at ground floor. It would also provide 209 homes in a mixture of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom homes, including 10% wheelchair dwellings. This is an uplift of 118 homes from existing, and as we've heard, the existing residents would have a right to return if they chose to do so. The scheme is considered to be high quality design and sustainable, achieving 62% carbon emission reductions on site. As we have heard, there would be impacts on a limited number of neighbours with regard to light. However, these have been carefully considered and the proposals were amended throughout pre-application discussions. It's considered that overall they would retain an acceptable level of light, and the scheme is considered acceptable in this location. There would also be some less than substantial harm to heritage assets, most notably Kew World Heritage Site. However, the impact is limited, and whilst the asset is of the greatest significance, when balanced against the substantial benefits of the scheme, is considered acceptable. Therefore, we are recommending approval with conditions and obligations, including the additional obligation to Councillor Lukey has proposed. I would draw your attention to the addendum. There's just a couple of clarifications, particularly on a couple of conditions in that, but we are recommending approval.
Thank you, Kiri. Okay, so questions for the officer, please. Officers, please. Councillor Mel Collins.
One of the biggest problems I see, but yet not insurmountable, is this question of light. Now, those of us that are interested in such things, the sun's trajectory from east to west is quite interesting in Albany Road, because the properties that we're actually talking about face due south. And so if, and it's a big if, you were minded to even consider the amendment from the objector, how would it be possible to actually relocate those loss of those properties without impinging on the light, particularly to the courtyards of the rest of the development, because this is something in pre-app that we were quite concerned about, that if bearing in mind the trajectory of the sun in the summer compared to the winter is quite considerable. And so I'm just wondering if we were even minded to look at that question, how would that how could that equate without losing any of the 209 properties which we've got?
Thanks, Councillor Collins. I'm not entirely convinced that it would be possible to redistribute and retain the 209 homes and retain the levels of daylight to those courtyards and the properties in sight. There were options tested which tried to increase the height on the high street side of the development, but when they were tested, that did have negative impacts for the quality of the design, and particularly on those courtyards, and also negative impacts, particularly in views from Kew and some of those heritage assets as well, because it would be taller. So whilst I fully sympathise with the objectors, and we acknowledge that there would be an impact on them, that we've very carefully considered it. The scheme was amended during pre-app to improve, so that the levels of light they're retaining now is more than in previous versions of the scheme. So we have worked very hard to try and balance this so that there is an acceptable level for all users, and we are comfortable with the level we've come out with now.
You supplementary, Councillor Collins?
Thank you.
Supplementary, then, second question.
My other question, which I was hoping somebody was going to cover but hasn't, in pre-app also we talked very considerably about designing out crime. And can I ask how far you've actually got with talking to our new Safer Neighbourhood teams about designing out crimes on this new development, should we be minded to pass it this evening, bearing in mind that over the last 10 years there's been varying degrees of antisocial behaviour in this area, and let's get in there quick to deal with this matter. And I wonder if you could just cover that, please. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. So as part of the application, we do have to consult on designing out crime. A number of recommendations were made by the design out crime officers, and they are committed to by the applicant to implement. And there's also a condition that requires them to meet the relevant accreditation, and that would be issued by the Metropolitan Police, but in consultation with the internal council teams as well. So we are very assured that it will meet those high standards and hopefully eradicate some of the issues that have previously been experienced.
Okay, Councillor Tony Lukey.
If officers could just remind us, because I didn't ask Mr. Kumar. This is a council block, largely owned by council, London Borough of Hounslow. A few right to buys, no doubt. All the units that are going to be built, will they all be for council rent?
So the council do own the majority, but Shepherd's Bush Housing Group own Osier Court currently.
Yeah, 15 flats, yeah. Go on.
But so it'll be 9 of the 209 that are going on, 202 will be at council rent and 7 will be intermediate. So that's a shared equity product if some of the existing leaseholders exercise their right to return. So that's why they are classed as intermediate. Obviously, if those leaseholders didn't choose to return, then those 7 would also be council rent. So it's 97% council rent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guy Lambert.
Thank you, Chair. talk to me about vans. This may not be your specialist subject, but it is. For me, this is quite an important issue that we keep putting up car-free developments, and I hear with some scepticism about that what we've done about cars, but I doubt we've considered vans at all. Certainly, a couple of years ago, I had a sort of lengthy correspondence with somebody who might even live in Market Terrace, or certainly, if not that Albany Road, who said he was parking his van in Ealing at his dad's house because he couldn't park in the CPZ and there was nowhere else to park. And if he parked in Albany Parade at the time, he had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning or something to stop getting a ticket. And he needed the van overnight because he worked for Mercedes and was on call out. Now, and it made me think. We're turning Brentford into a place where ordinary working people cannot live because there's no if they happen to have plumbers or work for Mercedes doing accident repair, they can't live there because they need access to vehicles late at night. So I'd like to hear that some consideration is being given in the sort of overall planning thing to provide a solution for those kind of issues. Thank you very much.
So the parking surveys that were done don't categorise between types of vehicle. They count the number of vehicles that are parked, whether they be cars or vans or whatever. I think this is probably more of a vehicles that can park or that are eligible for residence parking permits. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at in overall terms of the policy, because I'm assuming it doesn't just affect Brentford, and it will be the same for every CPZ within the borough. But I'm happy to take that point back to colleagues who deal with parking management to see whether that can be addressed as a general point. I think it's difficult to respond to individual developments because of the nature of the the parking policy is borough wide essentially. So I'm happy to take that point back. But obviously, outside, as you mentioned, Councillor Lambert, outside of CPZ hours, anyone can park in those parking bays. Currently, the CPZ hours for the Brook Road South CPZ are they're not all day, so outside of those hours they would be able to park.
A return, Councillor Tony Lukey.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Lambert's has opened up a debate on this, and it is more whether it is for this development, which it is, because when you do patronise the Albany Spice and other businesses down there, you do see the vans parked on the car park there, and whether they are people that live around there. Because it's easy getting in and out, and there's a lot of space to park your van, or whether it is people staying, contractors staying at the hotels down on the high street, and it is across the borough too. I mean, we do have skilled tradespeople across the borough, living across the borough, and you might recall that not until recently there used to be a London Borough of Camden van parked up on London Road by the bridge there, near number 480, and it's because some organisations get their people to bring their vans home because they don't want to spend. I'm thinking of Ashmead Road Depot. They don't want to bring their vans. They want to develop their sites and then they can take their vans home. So we really need to sort this out pretty soon, because if we are talking about regeneration, we do need to address the needs of the population that are going to live there. And there's no point in putting these, in making people live outside of the borough, and driving in to operate in the borough. They're tradespeople. They've got enough people that have cleared off to Camberley. Well, good luck to Camberley. But we do need
Councillor Lukey, is this a question?
No, it's
as
a ramble.
statement?
It's a ramble, Councillor Smart.
I
all right?
realise that,
It's the
obviously.
last one before the council elections, not as if it's going to win me any votes.
But I absolutely pick up on that point, and I think Rob's noted that. I've got no idea because I've not actually ever used it, but my brain just went the large car park, the one down the high street. I don't know where the vans can access that. I've really got no idea because I've never been in there with my car, so I've had no need to park there. But I just wondered if there might be something.
Nobody has ever been in there.
You've been in there?
Nobody has ever been in
Well,
there.
I'm just wondering whether the very large vans could access it. Possibly not, because often those buildings, they don't, but I don't know. But I would just say maybe that's something you could have a look at with Ballymore. It's something that, because we should be working all together. So if there is space, I don't know. Just a suggestion. So I'll just leave that one with you rather than a question. But I follow your ramble, Councillor Lukey. Okay. Oh, hello. Dave, you got some. Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. Yes, that is definitely something that we are very aware about and we are working on. Okay. So I'm now going over to comment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Richard Foote, you did have your hand up before. Do apologise.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about, there's comments about vans and planners being expressed to, do more about it. I suffer on my estate with the exact opposite. The number of vans that park on my estate, especially when they're marked up with sort of Thames Water and gas, who have got rid of all of their car parks and sold them off. And the end result
And
is
this is
that
a
they're
question, is it, Councillor
Well, I'm
Richard
just
Foote?
yeah,
Or
I
another
will.
ramble?
Well, it's a prelude
To a
really
question, I
saying
hope.
to ask that we're not actually, the planners are not looking to do something to develop parking for trucks and vans on regular housing estates.
Okay, thank you very much. That's been noted by by Rob. Okay, so now we will move on, please, to comments and anything else. Councillor Mel Collins, I can see your hand up fractionally before Councillor.
It was,
Harley.
and I think we've given this a jolly good airing, and I would actually like to move chair approval.
I have approval on the table, Councillor Harleen.
Subject to any alterations to 106 or conditions.
Okay, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Harleen Atwell here. Okay, have approval on the table. Can I see all those in favour, please? Okay, that's all. Okay, that has been agreed. Non-chem. Okay, so I'm just quickly looking at the time. Does anyone need a break? Yes, a very brief one. Please, can we have 3 minutes, please? 4 then. All right, I'll give you 4. Okay, here we go. Okay, back again. Okay, so we have now got item 4, 1 Burlington Lane, Chiswick. Okay, over to Sarah.
Thank you. Sorry, here we go. Thank you. So this is an application for 9 new homes on top of the building at 1 Burlington Lane. It's an office building on the corner of the Hogarth roundabout. It's currently 5-storey within the Chiswick House conservation area. As a note, the existing office floors are subject to a prior approval application that's been granted to convert from office to residential, and that application remains extant. And the other part of this building, the pair in this picture up to the north, is A6 House, which has been converted into a 162-bed hotel room. You can just see that on the corner there. So in terms of the proposal, the additional units, the additional homes would go at roof level in the space here. It's 6 2-bedroom and 3 3-bedroom. They'd be independently accessed from that office space at the lower floors as existing. In principle, it's acceptable. There is no loss of office proposed as part of this application, and the homes do meet all the space standards and so on. I'll come on to that in a second. This scheme proposes at its rooftop level the sustainable methods of construction, and through the incorporation of air source heat pumps and photovoltaic panels, it would achieve a 60% reduction, greater than that required of building regs. There is also, as you will note, a carbon offset payment proposed to bring it to net zero carbon. The rooftop has been carefully designed to represent a continuation of the existing building. It wouldn't appear incongruous. It's not overly tall in comparison when seen from surrounding views, and would preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. As I said earlier, all the new homes would exceed the space standards and the amenity space requirements. There's a large communal terrace proposed at the top, which would exceed our space standards as well. And owing to its rooftop position and the height, there wouldn't be any harm to neighbours via virtue of loss of privacy or reduction in any daylight and sunlight levels. The site is located in quite a very poor quality public transport accessibility levels. So there are 4 car parking spaces proposed for these 9 new homes. They'll all have EV charging points. And the new homes would not be eligible for parking permits. We've got 20 cycle spaces proposed. The objections have been received primarily in relation to the construction and the impact on the private road that sits behind this building. So we've got conditions proposed that relate to those elements of the construction that we can control, comings and goings, the routes, noise and dust and so on. But just to be clear, that the actual road and the details of that road and any damage to that road would have to be considered and agreed between the parties that are between these parties that are part of this application. And just an addition, so there's some minor changes in the addendum, and just an additional note that didn't make it to the addendum is there's just a paragraph in the recommendation where we usually put a time period against which to get that section 106 completed. That's omitted from this, unfortunately, from this recommendation. So we will add that in through the minutes, that the section 106, should it be approved, should be agreed by August this year. And if not, it would have to either be agreed a further date or would be refused for lack of section 106 agreement. That's a standard paragraph. It was just missed off the report, so we're adding it in via the minutes. So subject to that and the conditions and the legal agreement, approval is recommended.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Councillor John Todd.
Very nice to see the Assistant Director here, if I may say so, Chair. She's missed out a time bomb, really. Paragraph 739 on page 134, please. Noise and air quality. TfL concede that Hogarth roundabout is the most polluted roundabout in London. It's appalling. We have, it's a slight political point here with a bit of license. We have declared a climate emergency, but we only measure pollution at this point on old glass bottles. They're called diffusers. So whilst Breathe London find large amounts of PM 2.5, which is a particulate that is very dangerous, there is no, I can speak with authority, there are no pollution readers both on the A316, which is on one side, and on the A4 the other. You haven't mentioned what was in the noise and air quality assessment, so I'd invite you to do so if you wouldn't mind, please, Director. My other point while I'm speaking, if you'll give me a bit of license, you quite rightly raised the Burlington Road egress, Sarah. That's a private road. I don't know if you're aware of that. Okay, I apologise. And it has been causing issues. I raised that, colleagues, because people coming over Chiswick Bridge are now cutting through this little turning to save the traffic going through on the Hogarth roundabout. That's all. Not in my ward, Tony. Yeah, but you have a bit of a record, I know. Anyway, okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
So in relation to the air quality, so an air quality assessment was submitted that met the standards that we have in terms of our air quality work that's done. It was assessed by our consultants and found to be acceptable. So the reasoning in the report is kind of reflecting in that acceptable statement that was received by the applicant. So I think what your point is more, I get it, it's a bigger strategic point about how we measure air quality in the borough. And I think as part of the air quality, the climate change emergency work is in hand to make those testing stations more frequent and more up to date.
Could you give us any measurement of what they found in the report? Or don't you have it here?
I don't have the measurements exactly, but what it has found is that the mitigation measures that they've incorporated do kind of meet the standards of an acceptable living accommodation for these new proposed homes within the tolerances of the guidance that's available for air quality.
Make one more point then, if I could, Chair, with your licence. There are 2 schools adjacent to this site, and they were considered by the GLA a year ago to have the most polluted schools in London. So we must have a very generous planning assessment on pollution. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mel Collins.
Thanks, Chair. I wonder if you'll just bear with me and I'll do this as best I can. My first and important question, there are 9 dwellings up there. Can you give us all of the habitable rooms in those 9 dwellings are within the London guidelines, or are any of them actually under?
All of the new homes exceed the space standards.
Right, that's my first question. The second big question that you haven't touched on at all, bearing in mind that all of these properties vary in size of 1 bed, 2 beds, and whatever. Where is the amenity space, and how bearing its proximity to the roundabout? Where is the amenity space to cater for the clientele up there?
So the communal amenities, so the big piece is on the roof, is on top of all of that additional story that's proposed on top of the existing building. The amenity space would be placed on the roof, and it's external amenity space, so it would be open to the elements.
If that's the case, is it not prudent for us to, and I'm not suggesting this at this stage, I'm just dangling a carrot. Is it not prudent for us to actually take some soundings in terms of air pollution, even though it's up that high? If the amenity space is there, surely they're going to be in direct line with all the nonsense of coming from the conglomeration of roads coming into that area.
So are you suggesting that we enclose the amenity space at the top floor? Because that would be I take the point that given its location, it might not be the most attractive place to have an amenity space, but it is at quite a high level. It's the highest, it is quite high. It's at fifth, it would be the 5th floor, is that right? Because it's on the roof of the existing. And enclosing it would mean that it didn't meet our policy of having an external amenity space. And it is around the block, so some of it is further away from the road than other parts of it.
Okay, I might, Chair, with your license, I might come back to that question in a minute. The other 2 questions I had was the main one, which you would have expected me to have asked. Bearing in mind that some of these dwellings are going to be more than 1 bedroom, what kind of accessibility are there for people with disabilities, or those who are elderly? Or are you expecting all of the residents in that particular area to be young, sprightly things, which is against our own equalities policy?
No, they're accessible. There is a lift being installed all the way up to the top, and they are all accessible via that lift. The requirement to come fitted out as an accessible unit in planning policy only kicks in at 10 and above, but this is 9. But yeah, you can get to all of them can be accessed via the new lift, 2 new lifts.
And my final question, apart from going back to the air quality one, which disturbs me, you say there's only 4 additional car spaces. Would one of those additional car spaces be blue badge?
It's something that we can negotiate. We're just checking. I don't know off the top of our head, but it's something that we can negotiate. If there isn't one already there, we can come back to you.
That's fine. Without labouring the point, because I obviously I'm not sure if other folk have got their hands up, and perhaps they might take this forward.
I have many people wanting to speak, Mel.
In which case, I'll defer that then, Chair, and say I'm really not happy about.
Okay, I don't think you should be commenting at the moment. I'd like to do questions. Thank you, Mel. So could you turn your mic off, please? Because I don't want to have to do that. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so I'll go with Alan Mitchell, please. Councillor Alan Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Given earlier comments about pollution and this location, what is the precise detail on the greening of this development? It's a very important issue. I see elements in some of the designs, but how is that supposed to mitigate what we're putting there? Thank you.
In relation to greening, so it's the challenge is there's an existing building, so they're not touching any of the lower floors in terms of changing that to ground floor. But at the top, they've got an amenity space that it will be planted. There's a condition about landscaping. That's as far as this application goes, given its location on top of an existing building. Or are you talking more about the sustainability, reduction in carbon?
What sort of things are going to be planted there?
Well, we don't have the full details of the landscaping scheme. It is conditioned that we have a landscaping scheme to be submitted. I say that it usually is. We'll double check that it's been. Yeah, it has. If there's something particular that members would want in that, we can add it in. But it usually is at that level, at a high up, is limited by usually you've got a metre of soil to plant within, but the landscaping condition is there so that there will be some greening of that space.
Councillor Tony Lukey.
This is you touched on this earlier with one of Councillor Collins' questions. I can't remember what it was, but the number 9 here. Yeah, why aren't there 10? We see that in other applications. We see one that's just been submitted in my ward, 9. Why can't we go for 10? Why are we shying away for a 10? I think we got that though it's gone now. It was a couple of years ago. We got one on the next item that was 9. Why can't we, as a local authority, look for the 10s and insist on the 10s. Did we have any pre-application on this application? Any pre-application discussions with the developer? And if so, why didn't we ask for 10?
It's a, you know, it's something that we always discuss. It's something we always investigate thoroughly. There is a fine balance between how much you put on site and getting a reasonable scheme as well. In this case, adding, and in most cases adding more, you'd have to usually go beyond 10 to make it viable to get any affordable housing. So it's not always the best case to get more units in terms of what you get overall as a council. In this case, you know, we always when it is on that precipice of 9 or 10, we always investigate and try and find ways of ensuring that the council gets the best out of the scheme. And in this case, 9 was found to be the kind of maximum that could be permitted, and in a reasonable sense here. We've got some larger units, which is good. We've got some really good amenity space, which is really great. So on balance, we've said that the 9 in this case is acceptable.
Guy Lambert, Councillor Guy Lambert.
It's a bit surprising to find that this building is not listed, given its spectacular elegance. It's probably the most hideous building in the borough, and it'll have another piece of hideousness put on the top. But my particular question is: there's around the sort of flanks of this palace, there's a kind of sticky outy bit at the first floor level, which is filthy, and it's particularly offensive. Can we put some trees on that and paint and make it a condition that it's painted and not so? It's absolutely, it's really horrible. But the view you've got there is the good side. I've got it on. I'm looking at it on my PC, and it's awful. And it.
Cherry blossom.
So can we get so what's the prospects of getting some improvements to particularly that particular excrescence?
Yeah, sorry, I was just double checking the because this scheme is just for the top. So where it touches the ground, there is improvements, but that wraparound is part of the prior approval scheme. So unfortunately, in this case, we can't secure landscaping to go onto that ledge. We did approve it on the other side where the hotel was. So I think it's fair to say that if the prior approval scheme seeks amendments, which is often what we see in these schemes, they will need to come to us and say, well, our resident, we think we could get more money if it has a balcony, or if the fenestration changes. In that type of application, we would be pushing for an improvement to that ridge level there.
It's already got prior approval, has it not?
Yes, so it's got the prior approval, so they can do the office to residential now.
Okay,
but what does happen often with these, and we've seen some of them at planning committee, is that they need to make amendments to the exterior of the building to make it you know, a better value home, and that's when we will be able to negotiate those elements.
There was something else, but I've forgotten it. So if you'll indulge me, I'll come back when I think of it.
Councillor John Todd.
Yeah, I was going to add a caveat to that. I totally agree with you, Guy. It's an eyesore. What happened? Our enforcement team served notices on the owner of that site, and they painted off the graffiti. And I think there's a condition there that they've got to do more work. So it's certainly in hand. But I totally agree with your suggestion.
Perhaps it might be good to just check that anyway, just out of interest. Yeah, and let us know. Would that be possible? Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mole. Sorry, right, have you,
Yeah, I remember my other point, which is about, it's a bit vague about waste and recycling. It sort of says it's sort of probably okay, maybe. And I'm not so concerned about it being probably okay, maybe, whilst it's 9 flats. But when the prior approval kicks in and it's 90 flats or whatever it is, then probably okay, maybe isn't good enough. So can we make sure that that is properly thought through? It's just the kind of place where there'll be no access for the wagons and.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it does say, yeah, it looks okay. And that, remember, that's just for these 9. So that's what we're considering today. So I'm very confident that the 9 can be accommodated. But in the prior approval, there was details of the waste, and that's one of the requirements. So that should be fine, subject to that condition.
okay, right, moving on. Anybody want to make a comment? Anybody going to make a comment? Anyone going to do anything? I'm looking at Councillor Harleen Atwell here, who's got a hand up. You'd like to move approval. Thank you very much. We've got a seconder for that, please. Thank you very much, Councillor Michael Dennis. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. And those against and abstentions? Is that against? Right. Okay, 1 against. Yeah, well, that's fair enough. Okay. That has been approved. Okay. Right. Okay. So now we move on to the matter of, oops, sorry, the last item on the agenda. 172-174 Wood Lane, Isleworth, pages 148 to 162. This was a matter which was called in by Councillor Chowdhury. Okay, now, unfortunately, or even fortunately, we don't know the good news. Councillor Chowdhury can't be here tonight, as she has just produced a beautiful, I presume, because we've had a conversation about it, baby girl. So I'm going to hand over. First of all, I will be reading a couple of statements. One is from Councillor Chowdhury, and the other one, which I'm going to read now, is from one of the residents who objects. Is that a neighbour who absolutely objects to this particular piece of what's the word? Post? No. Sorry, it's a service meter. Okay, so part of their statement is not able to be read tonight because it is reference to the original planning application, which was approved. So this is only to do with the actual object of our discussions tonight, which is the meter. Some people refer to it as a shed, but I'm going to call it a meter building. Okay, so amongst the comments that Balvinda Dillon produces are not observing due process. Multiple retrospective applications have been submitted for the brick shed built in the front wall garden. This was built without planning permission. Its existence was not noted by POs, planning officers, and building control during regular visits to site. The matter of this illegal structure was raised by a ward councillor to the planning department, and only then was action taken. Instead of issuing an enforcement notice, the planners unilaterally elected to cooperate with the developer, despite being a conservation area, to retain the shed. Such a structure should be situated in the rear garden, and especially so for a conservation area. The paperwork associated with some of the subsequent retrospective applications has not been posted on the LBH website. Notification letters not sent to neighbouring properties, and public notices not posted. Multiple retrospective planning applications have been submitted for this site. The planning officers do not appear to consider these in the context of the overall approved scheme. For example, the wooden outhouse in the rear garden was meant to have been demolished in order to comply with minimum space standards for parking and amenity space. The planners have considered the wood hut application in isolation and argue the structure is supplementary, which is clearly not the case given the non-compliance with planning conditions applied. An enforcement notice should be issued for demolition. Permission to widen the driveway has been given without consideration to the fact that the garden of the ground floor flat has been reduced in size, again reducing conditioned amenity space, hence not compliant with conditions of approval. The application was conditioned for approval only if it met minimum standards of parking provision and amenity space. The final building, including parking layout, access road, amenity areas and garden sizes, do not comply with the approved application, hence should be regarded as illegal overall and an enforcement notice issued. Windows to both the north and southern facing flanks respectively have been conditioned to be able to open by a maximum of 10 centimetres. These windows open to 90 degrees, hence allow overlooking over neighbours' legitimate private space and into kitchens. Perimeter lighting, movement triggered with 3-metre lampposts giving constant noise, light pollution, especially at night. This is not in the approved plan. That is that one.
Okay, so this is Councillor Chowdhury's speech that she's asked us to read out. Dear Planning Committee members, thank you for accepting my statement. As many of you will know, I've just given birth, so I can't be here in person. First, on behalf of residents, I welcome the efforts to retrospectively make changes. However, in their eyes, this is the equivalent of a child getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar and grovelling that they didn't really mean it. Given the amount of time the applicant, one of our key stakeholders in the borough and ward, has spent engaging with our planning department over recent years, it is disappointing that this issue has arisen. Committee residents ask that you consider this scheme as a whole. While your decision is only on one part, would you have approved the scheme originally with this tweak? Knowing many of you, I would argue probably not. Conservation areas are special things. We have very few of them in the borough for this reason alone. The proposed location has an additional negative impact on this, and a simple tweak to relocate it would resolve this. Instead, a screen is proposed that does not mitigate this harm in residents' views. Beyond the height tweak, the additional proposed changes to the highways gobbles up yet more public parking space and, in effect, privatises it in the name of road safety. This is a minor application, but given it relates to the original scheme, it forms part of it, should be assessed at the high level. I know, committee, you have more on your plate tonight than just this, but on behalf of the residents of the Osterley Park Conservation Area, this is an opportunity for you to show developers, big and small, that we take policy and process seriously. Please ask this applicant to think again to get it right by choosing a more sensitive location, which we can all get behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have the applicant here? Because is that Jagta Bolko? Yes, would you come to the... Okay, I'm afraid, obviously, we can't answer questions of the objections because we can't, because this is what there is. However, we have the applicant here who will give us do his speech, and then you will have the opportunity, obviously, to ask. You've got 5 minutes, okay? You'll be warned 30 seconds before the end, okay?
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is basically a meter housing on the front of the property. We're advised by the service providers and our M&E consultants that it has to be on the entry point of the site. And then if the meter shed was taken at the back, basically the service is coming close to on the footpath, which is close to the property on the front entry point. If you've taken it to the back, which is basically going all the way back and bringing back to the building, it's not financially, it wasn't viable to do it. Yes, we built that. Is housing at least about 20 meters in there, which is gas and electric. We have at every stage, we have spoken to the next door neighbor, Mr. Dillon, and we put an application in for retrospective when he was bailed. He did say about the height, and we've lowered the height as he wanted, and he was happy with it. And we addressed his fence and everything, whatever he asked us to do, we did it. And then he was happy with it. That was in the presence of Mr. Dutt and Mr. Surinder Dutt and Amrapal Dutt, which they were the owner, which is the Australia Development Limited, who done the development. And obviously we worked closely with the planning officer as well to make sure all the materials are matching with the building and the heights are okay, and whatever other materials we propose to cover it, sort of like kind of green walls and green roof and things like that. So it's not sort of like too much visible from the main road. Although they were talked about the visibility displays and the drop curves, which was what we proposed, which was approved by the highway. So which they're happy with it, and obviously the planning officers are happy with it. So that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any questions, please, for the applicant? Yes, Councillor Rajinder Sidhu.
Thank you, Chair. How many meters are you going to be inside that building?
Originally, it was 3 meters to each flat, which was 27 meters. But then we managed to fit 9 water meters in the building, in the riser, because they're not that big. They are at least about 20 meters there now.
Do you have any pictures how it looks like from inside?
The inside is 2 compartment. Basically, within that shed is basically a partition where there's 9 gas meters, and then there's a 5 partition, and then there's electric meters on one wall.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other questions? Right, Councillor Mel Collins.
If I switched it on, that's better. Yes, just a point of clarification to the last but one sentence that you made. You talked about greening the area. Chair, if we were able to make that a condition, is that acceptable?
So part of this application is this green screen here. I think, is it that you're talking about, or is it more actual planting? I suppose that's just whether it's part of this application or whether you're proposing something else.
Do apologise. Yeah, I meant more planting.
So long as if it were to, we'd have to keep the visibility displays as they were. So we couldn't require anything that comes into that display line of visibility, but on top of the building would be permitted in terms of the highway safety of the scheme.
I do apologise to you. Yeah, if that's acceptable, then providing the applicant is agreeable, could I move that, because that seems very
No. You can't do anything at the moment because we are still on. We're not even going anywhere yet. So we've got to still question the applicant. We've still got, and I've got people who want to do that, Mel, and I've also got to go through the officer's report. So please don't. Yeah, you hold your horses very much. Thank you very much. Okay, can we just hold on to that one, please? Right, sorry about that. I've got Councillor John Todd.
Good evening. How are you? Yeah, I want a bit more information here. Excuse my back, but when I look at the picture, what's the extent of your building there? Is it from the meter all the way down here, or what? Does your property the whole length of this? I'll turn around. There's a picture of houses there. How much of that is your house? How many of those houses? Is everything in the front there yours? Okay. So the meters, these huge number of meters, they service those flats. Who designed that meter box?
It was originally the M&E consultant.
Okay. Okay. How many times you mentioned the neighbour asking you to do various things?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just remind me what you've done to just dealing with that box.
Yeah.
You've reduced the height.
Yeah, it was a height. He asked us that it was too high for him.
And how much did you reduce?
We reduced it by at least about 350 mil to bring it into the level to his
So is it flat with
boundary wall?
Sorry, I'm over talking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's on the same level as your boundary wall.
His boundary wall.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
And yours then.
Yeah. And then he said that he wanted some trellises put in because he can still see a little bit roof. So which we did.
Where I can't see the trellis. Where's the trellis?
On his fence. I mean, if you look at the officer's report, I think there's a picture in there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So which we did for him to make sure that he's happy with that. And he said he was absolutely happy with that.
Okay. Well, you've got the officer's report. I'm looking at the photograph at the top of page 151. Can you see it? Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Page 151. Yes. You're reading a different report.
No, I just got the officer's report.
Well, I've got the officer's report, and it's not that one. Okay. How do you just? Okay. I'm looking at a half-finished box next to a wooden fence, where the line is below, but there's not manhole covers and things like that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So when did you finish the amendments to this box?
That was finished probably about
How when?
2 months ago.
2 months.
2-3 months ago, I think.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. Thank you, Mr.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tony Lukey.
Thank you, Mr. Bogle. This plan application, the application for 172, 174 Wood Lane was approved a couple of years ago. How come this didn't appear in the plan application then? How come there have been various other changes, and this is the latest change on the at this site? Why wasn't where had you first decided to place the meters when you got your planning permission originally?
Yeah, we acquired the site with the planning permission. It was the different architects who designed it, and it was never catered for it in the beginning. So when we took over the site, that's when we sort of like when we started doing the working drawings and all the detailings, and then got the M&E consultants involved in it. When they did come to check all the services, that's when we got sort of like built and designed.
We'll check with the officers in a bit, but there was no provision for electricity, gas, or water when you bought the site or you took over the site.
There wasn't a housing or anything mentioned on there.
Yeah, but where were the meters originally mentioned for then?
It wasn't mentioned.
Not even in the units. No. Nowhere. So
it wasn't mentioned.
Was it going to be candles?
I mean, if you look at the.
Excuse me, sorry, Mr. Bogle, could you put the mic down a little bit?
Sorry.
Because
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
better.
Yeah.
So this is 2 years.
If you look at the original planning application, you'll probably see it. Yeah.
So there was provision then for meterage in the original planning application. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been approved. So why after nearly 2 years, the decision was to you said that this was built because you didn't think it would be viable to put the make the housing of these utility cabinets, this utility building, more unobtrusive. You can by putting it at the back, you're saying it will cost you money. That's basically what you said.
It's well, I mean, if you think about it, yeah, that's a financially not viable to do it at the back, but we did explore the other options as well, trying to put into the flats and things like that. But for that many meters for each flat, we didn't have any space to put it in. We managed to put the water ones in, but we couldn't put the electric and the gas ones in. Yeah.
So when I visit somebody in a 1-bedroom flat on the old Marlborough garage site on London Road, Fraser-Nash Close, they're able to read their meters from indoors. So they can get there's space for meter cupboards even in 1-bedroom flats. This is quite a substantial development. So why is it important or imperative? This is the only way to get your meters in, by putting this retrospective brick building in the conservation area at the front. Why is that the only solution? Just because your M&E man said it was?
No, as we were advised by the service provider as well, but the gas meters can't be within the flats. It has to be outside for the health and safety or whatever, the explosions or whatever, however they look at it.
But they didn't say you have to have it right on the front of the front on the street,
Well,
did they?
If I submitted the Crown Energy, what they said was there has to be at the entry point, somewhere at the entry point, and that's the best place we could see it, at the entry point.
Well, that's just your M&E man talking, wasn't it? Saying it should be
service provider.
There's no letter from British Gas or SSE there. There's no letter from Trident.
There should be one from the Crown Energy, who were involved with us to get all the services together.
Crown Energy aren't a provider.
No, they are they arrange it with the providers.
Okay, all right. Okay, and which planning officer told you it was all right to do this?
Well, it was the planning officer was I think it was Jack Meacham, was the case officer.
And he said it's okay to do this, and then apply for planning permission after.
No, he didn't say planning permission after. Obviously, we applied as a retrospective because he got built, because builders were on site. So when they decided, they just built it quickly. So because it was built very quickly, so obviously we applied for retrospective application.
So who instructed the builders then?
Pardon?
Who instructed the builders to build it there?
Well,
Who said it was okay to build it there?
Yeah, on the site manager must have done it. Yeah.
What's your role in this
Well,
in this
I'm an
enterprise?
architect. I'm an architect.
Chair, I think it's pointless asking more questions, to be honest.
Thank you. Any more questions, please, for the applicant? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go over to. Thank you very much indeed. You can sit back now. That's fine. Okay, Sarah.
So I think it's been. We all know what the application is for. This brick building in front of the development that has now been pretty much completed at 172 to 174 Wood Lane. It is in the Osterley Park Conservation Area, and the application is part retrospective in that when it was submitted, the building existed, and since it has been submitted to the application included a reduction in the height as has been explained. And we've heard that there is a proposal to put a green screen on the front of it, so that view that we've got here would be fitted with a green screen. So it would be positioned below, it now is positioned below the fence of the joining neighbour, so it doesn't impact outlook, daylight sunlight for the neighbour. There has been previous submissions on the site for this scheme that were refused. The reduction in height has fundamentally got us to a point as officers that we accept that it would preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area, not harm neighbours' living conditions. So therefore we, along with the confirmation of the visibility displays that have been confirmed and secured by condition to safeguard the safety of the egress of the site, are recommending approval subject to those conditions.
Okay, questions for the officer, please? Councillor Tony Lukey.
Sorry, can you just say that you think this enhances the conservation area? Is that what you just said?
I said it preserves the character and appearance of the conservation
How
area.
does it? How does a new unauthorized construction enhance improve the outlook or the character of the conservation area?
I didn't say enhance.
So say that again then. Sorry, I didn't hear what I wanted to hear, Sarah.
I said it preserves, so there is no demonstrable harm to the conservation area as a result of the proposal that's in front of you. That's the conclusion that we've come to.
Despite it being retrospective and despite it riding roughshod over previous permissions given, including the splay, including the outlook, including everything that was considered when it first went to planning before. People around there were expecting something different, and then they've just had incremental since, and we're buying that, are we?
Our job in front of us in considering this application is the impact that this building has. So I do appreciate that it's very challenging for surrounding neighbours when they see an application be approved and then changes are made. But unfortunately, it's quite commonplace for changes to be made in throughout the building work and the construction process of quite large schemes as this is. It's not an offence to build something without planning permission. We've investigated. This application is a result of that investigation. It's been amended, and officers are happy that this is an acceptable scheme to present for approval.
But sorry, Chair, if this was going to be if this was new, if this was something new, it was going to be new, and if somebody asked for advice from planning officers, would planning officers say, yeah, build it there, instead of saying build it somewhere less obtrusive? Or you will accept anywhere that someone suggests to build it, even though it is reducing height from what was originally built. But that doesn't really shouldn't really give license to still having something there which could easily be located elsewhere.
So we've taken it on face value. The scheme as presented, the shed as it's positioned, doesn't harm the character and appearance of the conservation area and doesn't harm neighbours' living conditions. I appreciate that it's not what was originally applied for, but when we apply the local plan policies to the scheme that's in front of us, it's found to be acceptable from officers.
Chair, sorry, look, the Mr. Bogle, the architect, says that this was discussed with a planning officer. Why would a planning officer say this is a better location than putting it round the back?
I don't think that's necessarily what has happened. The application, when we're in discussions with the applicant, we of course would look for the best place. What's in front of you today is something that, in officers' opinion, doesn't harm the conservation area and doesn't harm neighbours' living conditions. So we found it to be acceptable. That's not to say that there's numerous other places that it could be positioned, but given the evidence that the applicant has submitted from the M&E consultant about why it needs to be located here, and the fact that it doesn't harm neighbours' living conditions or the overall appearance of the building or the conservation area, officers have recommended approval.
Just one more, Chair. So whenever a consultant offers their opinion on a project, again, is that bought or is that not questioned? Just because I've got a letter from I've got a letter from a consultant here, might have a letter from a consultant here that says something different. So why are we buying a letter from a paid for consultant, a consultant paid for by the applicant or the client? Why are we accepting that as at face value?
We asked the applicant to demonstrate why it needed to be there, and they submitted evidence that demonstrates that. At the part of the planning process is that applicants submit evidence to justify their position all the time, that this is part of that evidence.
And we accept all evidence.
Come on, we're going round and round in a circle here, Tony. Come on. Look, you've been told, been given an answer. You may not like it, but that's the answer. Right, I've got Councillor John Todd.
Sarah, some people use very emotive language about unapproved, unauthorised. Retrospective applications are very frequent, as you said. Would you agree with that?
Depends on your definition of very frequent. They're not as frequent as none, but we do get quite a few retrospective planning applications, yes.
You don't regard them with suspicion or any sinister implication?
Not on the whole, they are a planning application that we consider on the merits of its case.
Picture I'm getting here is remarkably that someone's built a large property and forgotten to fit basic utilities into the premises. Do you have evidence of that?
Well, on the original plans, there was an area of services, but I completely accept we see it in larger schemes that have more ability to move things around, that space that's allocated at planning stage isn't big enough to house. We hear that quite frequently. In this case, it was to such an extent that they needed to go externally to the building, but it's not an unusual situation to be in.
Testing your memory now. I've been involved in a bit of charity work with buildings, and all the gas meters and all the utilities are put in the front of the house so the meter reader can use them. Is it very usual to put them in the back?
To be honest, I mean, I couldn't comment for. I suppose every scheme is different, but it makes sense to me that they would be accessible. It's not something that we govern specifically in planning terms.
You've been asked some very difficult questions. Can you clarify what Councillor Unter sees to be so offensive about this block?
I can appreciate that changes to planning applications can be very frustrating for the residents who are affected by the application and who live around it. But as I've said, we've assessed the application, given its reduction in height, and that that there is no impact to neighbours' privacy or daylight and sunlight. We've found it acceptable.
And my final question, I'll ask you a hard question. I'm sorry. Yeah, trying to put it in context. You asked the applicant to reduce it. Did he readily agree to that? Is there any evidence of hostility or obstruction or evasiveness in the applicant's behaviour?
Not that's been brought to my attention, no.
Councillor Guy Lambert.
Think about it before answering this. If this wasn't retrospective, would it have been approved?
Well, it was in front of the planning committee, so whether it would have been approved is a question back to you. Buildings in the front of properties are quite common. All I can say is that we've assessed it, and there is no harm. So the same assessment would have been made if it were in front of us as at the original stage of planning application, I can assume.
Right, okay. I think that's enough questions, isn't it? It looks like it. Okay, Councillor Harleen Atwell here. I've just seen you wave your hands. Is this a question or? No, you as comment. Is a comment? You're moving approval. Okay, I have approval on the table. Can I have a seconder? Thank you very much. Right, we have approval on the table. Can I? It's been moved, so I need to take that's.
Well, can we have a discussion on it?
What? Sorry.
Well, can I seek the movers and the seconders reasons for approval? I can give you my reasons for.
Yeah, but I don't think you should be doing that at the moment,
No?
Councillor Lukey. Could you please? Thank you. So I don't have to turn your mic off. I've had, as my usual practice is, if somebody has moved something and it's been seconded, we move to the vote. It's at that point, if the vote falls, then we can we can go back to the comments. What I've got on the table at the moment is the moving officer's recommendation, and I think that probably says it. That's what they're saying. So can we see those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please? Can I just see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Have you got those? Just hold your hands up for a moment. Yeah. Okay. Those against, please. Right, councillors. Okay. Okay. It's been approved. Okay. You want to move a point of order?
Seeing as you sent me to the naughty step in the debate, Chair, can I just ask whether we can actually add the condition that I tried to ask about 10 minutes ago, which the applicant was willing
about
to
greening?
accept?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Well, he's already agreed to that, hasn't he?
He had, but
yeah. Well, he's
I wanted to make sure that it was there.
It's. You're doing that as a. You want that as a condition, do you?
Yes, please.
Okay, is that okay? That's acceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so other planning matters. There is no other business which I've been asked to consider as urgent. The date of the next meeting is to be confirmed, but we do have a date in the calendar, which is July. June, sorry, it's been moved. 16th of June. Okay. No. Well, I shall not be following this in great example because I shall be in Botswana or somewhere similar. Finally, after the third attempt to getting there.
Chair.
Sorry.
So I want to vote of thanks for you being an excellent chair for 2.5 years. You'll be missed.
Can I second that? Probably the best chair since Bob Watley.
Yes, here. Yeah. I'll third that, Chair.
Mel?
Yeah. Chair, I don't know whether you were going to do this, but if you were, or I'm sorry for stealing your thunder, I believe this is also going to be the...
I was.
You carry on. I won't steal your thunder.
It is also the very last appearance of our senior planning officer tonight. So she and I are both departing on the same evening as planning. But she will, of course. We're not quite sure when you're leaving.
Yeah, I'll be gone by the next planning committee. So yeah, I leave it in June.
So,
Birmingham.
However, she is staying here in Hounslow to live. So she's not leaving us completely. Anyway, it's been. May I just say it has been really it's been a delight with this interesting planning committee for this year. Thank you all very much indeed, and thank you very much for your kind words. And can I thank Wendy for all she has to put up with things, because I think Wendy has to do an awful lot. Okay. And a variety of planning officers, obviously, and our legal beavers. I rely on my legal beavers very much. So thank you all very much, and good luck to those of you who are standing and anyone who is like me, escaping. Moving on.